Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for being here, especially when there's so many things interesting happening at the same time. So I know how difficult it is to choose. And thanks for the organizers for inviting me to be here and for the opportunity to speak. And espera, amor, isso é da mamãe, não pode mexer. So as she was saying, I'm an anthropologist from Brazil, so my background is very academic, but I'm going to try to be more in the festival context. So, but yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with the indigenous people that I work with in Brazil, focusing especially on their medicine, ayahuasca. And contrasting it with the whole psychedelic renaissance that it's happening all around the world. So one of the things that I wanted to ask and think of when I was invited for this talk is what is medicine? Because this is the medicine festival. So to me, there are many definitions of medicine and many ways of perceiving different medicines. And I normally, I was thinking about how to start it. And if there was an indigenous here with me, he or she would certainly start with a story. So I'll tell you a story when I was with the Yawanawa people in Brazil, which is one of the people that I most work with and that I've been learning most of the things that I'm going to share here today. And there was this moment in which I was trying to learn a little bit of their words and how they say specific things. And I asked the pajé, the shaman I was working with, what is sacred to them and in their language? How do they say sacred in the Yawanawa language? And he said to me that they don't have like a soul, a unique word for sacred, but it's actually the mother's milk, the act of breastfeeding. And I think you've just listened to some oxytocin talk. And to me, that was very symbolic because he was explaining that it's because we have the ability to feed the children that we keep life going. And then I started to think, how are we feeding ourselves in our society, in Western society as a whole, but in modern society? And this is how I came here and started to think about medicine as well. Because if we look at the dictionary, there are many definitions, but the World Health Organization tells that traditional medicine, which is the indigenous medicine and many other like local medicines, is the sum of total of the knowledge, skill, practices based on theories, beliefs, experiences of local, traditional, and indigenous cultures, whether explicable or not, used in maintenance of health, as well in the prevention, diagnosis, improvement, or treatment of physical, emotional, and mental illness. So there are many things in this definition. And to me, the part that was very interesting, especially when you think about an international organization like the World Health Organization, is this part of whether it is explicable or not. Because many of the people that ask me about my work with indigenous people, they think it's just like magic, spells, and superstition, and something that you really need to believe on to have an effect. And to see that definition, that part of the definition, to me was very interesting. And I was also looking at the definition of medicine in the North America First Nation peoples called who speak the language of Ojibwe from the United States and Canada. And for them, medicine is mashkiki. That's the word they use, which means the strength of the earth. This means to them that everything that comes from the earth or is offered by the earth can be a medicine, including us. So we can be medicine to each other. And that is also something that made me think that this is probably one of the medicines that we are most needing nowadays in our society, in modern society, to be there for each other, to take care of each other. And then we are going to see that this is what indigenous people do, not just with each other, but with nature. So moving to ayahuasca, it's such a complex medicine, and I'm not sure how many of you here have experienced it. Maybe you can raise your hand if you want to share a little bit, yeah. And I bet before doing it, probably you all looked at Google to search about it and to understand what happens when you use ayahuasca and so on. And I think this is so unique that there is no Google, no dictionary, no definition of what you were going to experience with ayahuasca. And to the indigenous people, it's a medicine that is very sacred, and it's used for millennium. So it's the whole psychedelic renaissance. For them, it's not a renaissance. It's something very historical, very cultural, and again, very sacred. And ayahuasca is a word from the Quechua language, commonly translated into English as vine of the soul. And it refers to this vine that scientifically is named Bicaapi, but more often to a brew known also by many other names, such as Camarampi, Uni, Nishipai, Iagé, Daime, Vegetal. And most of these names, they belong to the Amazonian indigenous people that use ayahuasca, which are around 160 nations. This is just the ones that are identified nowadays, and they are spread along the Amazon basin. And there are many recipes to prepare ayahuasca, and I'm not talking just about the components and the plants that are mixed to do it, but also about what comes before it. So when they go to harvest these plants, they pray, they chant, they have a whole ritual before doing it and while doing it. And so there are many combinations with Bicaapi, and to be honest, there are different types of the vine as well. And there is no identification by the scientific community of all these types yet. But when you go to these people, they know exactly which type they are harvesting, and they already named them in different ways in their native languages. So the vine can be mixed with 90 different potential plant additives, but the most common one is called P. viridis or D. cabrerana, and it is also known as chacruna, another word from the Quechua, meaning to mix. And it is this species, actually, the chacruna, that it's the ones that contains DMT. So probably when you Googled it, there was a lot of things that came up relating ayahuasca to DMT, and a lot of people think that ayahuasca is mainly a DMT mixture, but the vine alone doesn't have DMT, and a lot of these natural uses sometimes don't mix the vine with any other additive or any other substance that contains DMT. And so much like the classical psychedelics, ayahuasca use has been associated with a lot of therapeutic outcomes, including the alleviation of depression, addictions, and to the indigenous people, a concept that is more related to their traditions is the one of master teaching spirit instead of molecule or psychedelic. So what is happening now is that with the psychedelic renaissance, there is a lot of conferences and a lot of research around ayahuasca, and we have numerous patents on DMT that have been already filed, as well as trials and startups and pharmaceutical companies studying the benefits of ayahuasca and also the negative effects as well. And there is also the first medical grade drug candidate of ayahuasca being developed this year as a pill of ayahuasca. And many of these debates and many of this research, they don't include indigenous people. They are being done by scientists without the help and without the knowledge of the people who actually know more about ayahuasca. And because of that, the indigenous people from the Amazon, they organized the Indigenous Ayahuasca Conference, and it's been happening for 4 years, and it's a very important arena of the debate for the indigenous people. So since I've begun working with indigenous people, I have thought a lot about ceremony and ritual as well, because for them, you just use ayahuasca in ceremony, in ritual. You don't have this sort of microdosing or pill or something that it's something that we are now looking after. And all human societies have ceremony. We all have rituals, including religious, national rituals, seasonal festivals, like here, rites of passage, like birth, marriage, death. And there is a common thing among these rituals, which is generally community and culturally based. And as an anthropologist, I was very inspired by the work of American anthropologist Gregory Bateson and the view he had about rituals as serving as this corrective function, allowing integration of individual consciousness with the larger circuits of mental process, including collective and what he called ecologies of mind. So for him, plants like ayahuasca can be seen as tools for sort of like blurring the ego and going further of the ego boundaries between individuals and not just between individuals, but to the larger social and ecological context that individuals are in. And ritual, in this sense, is sort of like an instrument to foster self-transformation, while at the same time challenging whoever is in the ritual, in terms of the participants of the ritual, cultural and basic assumptions about the world. So he also he used to say that our concepts and our discourses and our epistemology, to use a more academic word, perpetuates a system of understanding that it's more like means to an end. We do something looking at the results, looking at the outcome. We want to reach something, which is very different than the indigenous perspective of rituals, which is something that they enjoy the process. It's the whole process of being ritual that it's more important, and not what you reach after it. And this perception that we have, like, about the result, the outcome, and what we seek in the end, because this is another thing that I kept thinking about, like the festival as a whole. Why are we here? What are we seeking coming here? And what needs to be healed? And what types of medicines are we looking for? So this sort of like the result and the outcome actually limits our consciousness and our wisdom and what can be generated when we are in these rituals and everything, because we keep thinking about the result. And then Bateson, he argued for a more like a humility and acceptance of the natural system instead of this sort of like scientific arrogance in relation to it, where we need to find what are the positive and negative effects of something and what this can result to us. So, and this humility could only come about when thought and emotion are combined to acquire knowledge. So it's not just about having a rational thinking about what is ayahuasca, but also about feeling it. And I think here is where Bateson and Indigenous beliefs intersect, because this understanding of humility is absolutely central to Indigenous ontologies and cosmologies. They see themselves as nature. They are so deeply immersed in nature that they have a lot of experiences that actually, for them, it's more about like we are nature. And because of that, they have deployed what has been called technologies of enchantment. And I think this is another thing that we lost in our society, like how to be enchanted, how to enchant ourselves and each other. And this actually reinforce our connections with places and beings and other beings, not just human beings. So to Indigenous people, they perceive themselves as serving this other than human beings. And rather than the opposite, for us, for many of us here, nature is there to kind of like provide us with water, with sun, with soil, with earth, and so on. But for them, it's the opposite. We are here to actually serve all these beings. And then for them, they have a lot of care in terms of nature. And it's care that provides diversity and abundance. The more they care about it, the more diverse and abundant nature is for them. And this is completely affective and not like sort of like calculative and rational, again, as we tend to think. And to me, this is another thing, to go back a little bit to the beginning, that we are missing, to take care of each other, to take care of nature, to take care of even the very small beings that are around us. And they can be very powerful, because if we think about coronavirus, for example, such a small and invisible being, and kind of like showed us our place in the world a little bit during the pandemic. So this awakened to me a lot of this Indigenous perception in terms of who we are and our whole in relation to these beings. And these different beings come into being through their relations with the others, what actually has been called relational ontology. And this sort of like relationality, it happens not just in Indigenous cultures, but in many other cultures. They're more traditional, pre-industrial cultures, such as paganism, for example. So for the Quechua-speaking people, the individual is constantly becoming other, and people don't have this fixed identity. So when you drink ayahuasca, you are becoming a bit of what the plant is. And this sort of like transition and mutability are part of every being, including us. So we are always mutating depending on how we feed ourselves as well. So that's, to me, the question about how are we feeding ourselves, it's very important as well. So now I want to give some examples of how ayahuasca is understood in two different groups in the Amazon. The Honey Queen, who are here, and the Yawana. They are both from Brazil, Acre. Some of them are already in Peru, but originally they are from Brazil. And both of them have been leading the spread of their culture around the world, as we can see the Huni Queen here in the festival. And so I think they're good examples of how to look at it. So the Huni Queen, they name ayahuasca Nishipan, as they believe it is this wire of enchantment. So again, there is the enchantment behind the name that they gave to ayahuasca. And for them, in everyday life, we can only see the ordinary side of reality, the bodies, and not the revealing, the more subtle aspect of the identity that is common to all living beings, and which they call Iushin. So this is very difficult to translate, but it could be translated as the spirit. So perceiving the Iushin that inhabit all the living beings and recognizing them as Huni Queen, as their selves as well, enables them this perception of equality among these different beings and all beings. For the Yawana, ayahuasca is the sacred vine. They name it as Uni, and by doing so, they teach us about unity and how their rituals and journeys through Uni actually ensure the relationship between humans and other beings, and ensure that this relationship is one of union, of unity, of balance and reciprocation. So for them, taking Uni is actually an opportunity to expand the family. And here the family, again, refers not just to the family of humans, but to this extended family of other than human beings. And it is only as a result of this sort of like continual engagement that they are able to understand the natural world. And the ritual to them is the way of sort of like being in balance in relation to these other beings. So they take ayahuasca, they are in ritual, and they finally reach this sort of balance. And then I think it's very important to think and to ask ourselves, what are our rituals? So what are we doing to ritualize the important things to us? And for them, the jiboya, I don't know if you were at the Huni Queen concert yesterday, they did a very beautiful jiboya dance, which is the boa constrictor. It is a sacred animal, and they see, and this is the same for the Yawana, and they see it as the first animal that came into the world, and the one, because of that has more knowledge about the world. So the boa constrictor is here much earlier than us, so it has a lot to teach us. And I think this is very different than many of us here should think probably about the jiboya. Probably we are afraid of it. But if we think that our Greek ancestors once thought about the healing powers of the serpent, that became the main symbol of the medicine, we can find these intersections among different cultures in terms of how to look at these other beings, at these animals. So moving on to the contrast between the traditional and scientific practices. So while the traditional use of ayahuasca differs among many different groups, the brew has been used by shamans, by pages, for healing, for divination, for understanding what are the illness of the community, and not just the physical illness, but other things that may need healing in the forest and may need healing in the community as a social body. And to them, chanting is very important, is a common element to most cultures who use it. And it is their form of praying, of their form of communicating to these other beings. And the chants help them to sort of tune to this balance that is needed. So once I've heard that having ayahuasca without someone chanting, without connecting to their prayers, to the chants, is almost like having a car without the fuel. So it's the chants actually that generate the visions and what you need to learn from the medicine. They also, the ceremonies involve dancing, singing, especially in Brazil, playing instruments. In Peru is a bit different. Many of the ceremonies happening in the dark, but yeah, there is always like a lot of prayer, feathers, burning resins, blowing tobacco, and sometimes they use other medicines as well to create this safe and protected space. But when we think about the biomedical practice, it's completely the opposite. First, there is this tendency to think about ayahuasca as just a vehicle for making DMT orally active. And such framing is interesting to the scientific model because it allowed like this smoother integration into it. But at the same time, it reduced ayahuasca to one substance. And ayahuasca has a complex mechanism of action that has actually been considered as an unusual challenge to the pharmacologist. So also to overcome this challenge, there is now a standardization of ayahuasca into the biomedical research, so they can do the research, they can finally understand what happens, and standardizing it, again, eliminates, if ever achieved, because there is a lot of argument that the biomedical research has never achieved this standard of what ayahuasca is. So, but if ever achieved, again, it reduces a lot of the complexities, a lot of the things and the compounds that are important to the healing. So, and most of all, they employ this, what is called the double bind design, because they need to check with placebos, and there is like a whole set of rules that the biomedical research needs to follow. And they completely ignore the variety of complex cultural, musical, social, spiritual interactions that are also part of the healing. Another part that is very important to traditional cultures that is completely ignored by the biomedical research is the diet. So again, how we are feeding ourselves. And diets are very, very important to indigenous traditions. They have different sort of diets for different plants and medicines and animal medicines as well that they use. And for them, like the healing typically occurs through the body, through the soul, through the whole complex of being, and not in the mind, as the biomedical research is observing. So mainly what is happening now at the biomedical research is that we are looking at the brain to see how ayahuasca works and which parts of the brain is activated and how it affects us. But for indigenous people, the healing is mostly done in different parts of our body and not just the brain. So the other thing is that the vomiting. So for the Ashaninka people, for example, the name they give to ayahuasca, which is Kamarampi, is to vomit. Because for them, vomiting is a very important part of the healing process. It's through the vomit that you can get rid of all the things that you need to get rid, not just through the body, but emotionally as well. But for the biomedical research, this has been interpreted as a undesirable outcome. So it's completely different than their perspective. So as ayahuasca, there are many other compounds that research in the biomedical field confirms the value of what indigenous people are doing for many years and what they know for millennia. And this knowledge that they have, it actually does not depend on any human technology. they learn it from nature, from the forest, from their experience with the forest. And it comes greatly from observing and interacting with the different elements of nature. So they have been studying and experimenting with their biodiversity for many years now. And they say we should learn how to listen to plants, how to listen to animals, if they want to hear, if we want to hear ourselves. So they speak in a different language than us, plants and animals. But if we manage to tune into their realms as indigenous people are tuned, then you can perceive and comprehend what they wanna say. And ayahuasca is one of the ways they use to sort of like tune to this realm of nature. And I think many people say that the ayahuasca experience give them this sort of like in tune, almost like you are a radio without a tune, and then you are in a ceremony, you drink it, and you feel you are kind of like back in tune, you know. So this is, to me, a great part of the healing as well, to be able to understand this tune. But it's not just about the moment you drink and the ceremony you are in. Indigenous people, they are in ceremony and they are ritualizing even without ayahuasca. So to me, the most important part of the ritual is what we do with it, what is our homework, and how we integrate all the experiences and the feelings and everything we had in the ritual after, in our day-to-day life. And this sometimes can be very complicated, exactly because of this sort of different perspective that comes in. Because when you are back to your normal life, it's kind of like there are other people that don't understand it, and then it fades out a little bit, so you are not really able to do your homework and everything. But it's certainly a way to sort of accelerate the change that you need to do, and the things that are important in terms of changing behavior. So I think, to me, indigenous people are actually scientists, and because they have so much knowledge about all this biodiversity, and the fact that they are not being included in this whole scientific research and all the psychedelic renaissance. And sometimes when they are included, they are just like kind of guests. They are not really sharing and exchanging with the biomedical community. And now they are really feeling the need to sort of fight for it, to fight for their rights. There was like the main psychedelic conference in the United States this year, and there were a lot of protests there. And the fact that the peel of ayahuasca is being developed is really worrying different groups of indigenous people. And I think the most important thing when coming back to the first question, what is medicine, is to think it's not just about the substance we ingest, because I think we have this tendency in modern society to sort of like have a solution where we can have a pill, we can press the button and find our ways out. I'm not saying that the ayahuasca pill will be a bad thing. We don't know, but I think the way the things are being developed without considering all this knowledge there is behind ayahuasca, it can be very dangerous. So I wish I had one of the indigenous people that I work with close to me now speaking, but I think there's going to be a honey queen woman talking after this talk, so maybe you can listen as well to what she has to say. But my main lesson with them is that we need to do rituals every day, and we need to learn how to care more for others. We need to learn how to care more for nature, and again to listen to what these other beings have to say. And I think again the pandemic was a very good moment to sort of try to tune into this other language and understand what we are being asked for as human beings, because we all depend on each other. We all depend on these other beings, and if it was not for them, we wouldn't be here. And I think there is this tendency to think that this Darwinism way of thinking, that we are all competing here and it's like the stronger will be better. And it's not just that. There are many other studies, including from Darwin, saying that we are just here because we were able to cooperate with each other and so on. So I hope you can go back home from the festival and take whatever lessons you had here and experiences from the rituals and from the medicines that you experienced here, but keep that to your everyday life and keep ritualizing, and don't think big, because sometimes this ceremonies and these festivals, they can be really big and they can be overwhelming as well. So you can be flooded in a lot of different information and different medicines and different things. Sometimes just like a small ritual of brushing your teeth or like having a bath with oils and things that are really small, and thinking about the power of water cleaning your body when you do that, this is a ritual already. So I think we need to kind of connect back to these small rituals, because again, when we think about the outcome and the result and what we need to achieve, it can be so big that we forget that to achieve that, we need the process, we need the step-by-step, we need to be able to wake up every day and do small things so we reach the end of the day with a better outcome in relation to ourselves, you know. And also, when we change ourselves, when we work on ourselves, then we are able to see other things changing in the world as well, the smallest that it could be or appear. So that's my advice in terms of what I've learned with the Indigenous that I work with. And thank you so much again for being here. I'm happy to answer questions if you have. And yeah, thank you.
It's more a statement. The sort of, you mentioned Darwin, and he's often misquoted as saying survival of the fittest, but he didn't say at all. That was from somebody else. And he said it was a survival of the most adaptive, and that's usually in community and diversity, because they've got the ability to then to work with each other and adapt and things like that.
Exactly.
So unfortunately, modern capitalism uses the word survival of the fittest to justify power over somebody else, and it's completely wrong. It's not what was said, and it's not what we should remember, and we should never repeat it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for complimenting.
Thank you for your work first.
Thank you.
And I was wondering about the practice in our societies with ayahuasca and the issue of appropriation. I was wondering whether you would have any advice for what's important for people who use the medicine in our countries to think about. And you talked a little bit about means and ends, but is there anything specific that you would say is really important to keep in mind as people engage in the practice here?
Yeah, I think thanks for this question, actually. It was something I was thinking I should talk about, and I forgot. Because I think there's a lot of ceremonies now, ayahuasca ceremonies all around the world, and many different types, and again, many different medicines and traditions and so on. And I think we need to be really careful, first of all, who we sit with, who we drink with, and be aware of what they are serving and their traditions and so on. And again, to think about the whole process, to kind of like prepare for it, and because there is this whole preparation, even when they are harvesting, even when they are like thinking of doing a ceremony. So in terms of the spiritual preparation, so they kind of like go and stay a little bit in isolation, and then they go and harvest, and then they pray and everything. So I would apply the same thing for us. The more you could sort of like go to your own realm first and understand what do you want from that, and do not expect too much as well. So don't go with a lot of expectations. So don't set many intentions. I think the more focused you are in terms of like having one intention, or even being open to it, because sometimes we want to learn everything, we want to find all the answers, and that can be very confusing to the experience as well. I think there is a lot of commodification as well of the ceremonies. It's very expensive, and then it needs to be something that it's in balance of what it used to be and what we are taking it for. Because of course they need the money. I'm not saying it shouldn't be expensive, but when you do something that is very expensive, you are selecting a lot of the people that are going to it as well. So I think we all have this sort of duty to be asking the people who are organizing, like about the traditions, about the medicine, about why it's so expensive, and how maybe there would be other ways of collaborating to the indigenous people, because this is something that I keep thinking that it's happening as well. They need a lot of different things, but we are giving them money, so sometimes I feel that if we were acting in the way that they act, which is more like reciprocity, trading, doing things for them that could be useful, and this could be like the smallest thing, as like translating them, things that look small to us, but for them can be very important. Finding different ways of collaborating to their projects on the local level as well. This is part to me of the experience, of the ceremonial experience as well, because this is what they do there. They're, again, helping each other, and I think we kind of commodified the experience a bit, where we pay for something, we get it, and then we think that that's the result. And again, the homework, for me, that's very, very important as well. And another, just to go back to you, another thing I think it's very important, thinking about their tradition as well, is the whole thing about chanting and music and dancing. I think this is part of the medicine as well, praying. So the more we could do these other parts as well, not just the substance, not just drinking, and I think this is really part of the healing too. We need to connect to this lineage that we were back in the more traditional types of beings, human beings and so on. So they used to dance, they used to be around the fire, share stories, and I think the more we do that with our community, being community, help our neighbors and so on.
What I was going to say was just continuing on the thread of appropriation, and a phrase which is in my head a little bit is that maybe somehow our consumerist Western society has, ayahuasca is now a very important part of Western spirituality, but perhaps in some ways it has become another thing that we are consuming in a kind of a consumist way from a place of lack rather than a place of completeness. And maybe we need to somehow see plant medicine as part of a set of community rituals, you know, and those rituals are the things that make us feel whole. We're not
Exactly.
coming from a place of lack where we need a medicine to make everything okay. Like, we
Exactly.
are complete, and we can engage fully in community rituals which are in place around us and which connect us to the land where we are.
Yeah, exactly. I think to me it was coming from Brazil. Like I live now in the UK, and when I came here, I was really surprised. And this is it's going to be 10 years ago next year. But I was really, really surprised with how many Europeans were so interested in ayahuasca and rapé and all the indigenous medicines. Because in Brazil, sometimes there is a lot of bias in relation to indigenous people because of historical colonialism and other things. So when I came and I looked, all the Europeans so interested. Oh, you work with indigenous people, much more than in there. And then this was something I started to think about. Why is that? You know, and why are they looking to the indigenous as well? So one of the times that I was with the Yawanawa, there are a lot of people from the Silesian Valley there, and spending like 20 days, and it was really big. And I was talking to them as part of my research, okay, why are you here? And one of the answers that most came up was that, like, oh, I'm searching for something, I've tried everything, so it's kind of like this lackness of something, and there is nothing else, so it's like the last salvation. Let's go to the Amazon and let's learn from them and use their medicines and so on. Yes, this could be a last salvation. This could help a lot. I'm not saying that, but we really need to be careful, because this help needs to come from ourselves first and not from something external that we are going to, again, consume and feed and think that it's going to be the solution. And we need to find these solutions in our lineage, in our land, in our community, not just like across the ocean, in the forest. You know, this can be part of it, of course. I'm not saying that. I support everyone to go there and try and experience and be with them and learn. It's the thing that most taught me in my life, not the degrees that I achieved or whatever. But still, I totally agree with you that it's much more in where we are and who we are, and finding out more about this than trying to find a solution externally. You know.
I have a question as well over here. Do you see me?
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I came a bit late, but thank you for this topic. And I think I just have a question maybe related to what you were talking about in terms of the consumerization of ayahuasca, because I feel like whenever something gets big in the US, it explodes and becomes this hype thing. And, you know, in the last, I would say maybe 2-3 years especially, all of these podcast hosts and very famous people in the United States have kind of talked so much about ayahuasca and how it changed their life. And as you mentioned, now there's this pill being developed. So it seems to be like as soon as something is kind of picked up by the mainstream from these famous people, especially I would say in the United States, because I don't see the same thing happening in Europe on that level or on that scale. So I just wonder how you think that that can be countered in a way, or what is it that we could do? Because right now I feel like it's almost too late to stop that, you know, commercialization of it, and people just going for a random ayahuasca ceremony with some random person who they've never heard of or met or know whether they actually have a relationship to the medicine at all. So just wonder if you have any thoughts around that and how, this could be somehow, you know, countered. What is it that we can do as a community that, you know, values the wisdom of the communities that actually, you know, are the wisdom keepers of this medicine and the knowledge that it gave them?
Yeah, I think you were right in terms of like how to stop it. I don't think we can stop it, and this is something that I've been trying to help the indigenous people I work with, because they are really worried about the patents and everything. And there are many patents filed in relation to ayahuasca, not just DMT. There is even a non-alcoholic beer being developed with ayahuasca, and they are really, really worried. And some of them are like, this can't happen. And when I started to work to help them, I was with this view. But after looking at everything that is happening, I realized I think ayahuasca now has many babies all around, and they were all born. And I'm not sure if they can go back to the womb, you know. So, and this is in relation to these ceremonies as well. So it's all around. And I think what we can do now is to pay attention how these babies are going to grow, you know, and how to take care of it. And I think, again, going back to what I said to him, being aware of the ceremonies you go, telling your friends to be careful, and understanding what is behind that ceremony, and what is the money being used to, and who is doing what. Sometimes I see ceremonies that have more white people as like the shamans than the indigenous. So there is one indigenous and like 9 white people benefiting from the money that is raised in the ceremony. So that's really something, as people who go to the ceremonies and participants, we need to really be aware of and think, okay, maybe I shouldn't go to this one, even if I need. Maybe I should wait for a kind of like a more traditional one, really the feeling is going to tell you. But I think it cannot be stopped, as you said. It's more about being conscious and being aware of what's going on. And the other thing is that it may be the way things are, and it may be this part of the process of the medicine that we need to go through to realize, okay, where to sit and where to drink and everything. So one of the elders that I work with, once I asked him, aren't you afraid, you know, of this appropriation of everything that is happening? And he said, ayahuasca is not ours. Ayahuasca is the forest. And we have the duty to share, but the knowledge is ours. And if you don't know how to use it, if you go to people who don't know how to use it, ayahuasca is going to show everyone what is wrong, you know. But yeah, we need to be careful for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing so eloquently and with so much nuance and perspective on the questions of today. And thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.